Greetings from the far side of the galaxy, I'm Fuuri, your host with the most, here to tell you a story about titties. And these titties have been some of my favorites ever since they debuted way back in Chapter 3. That's right, today we're talking about the subtle splendor of Claude's sophisticated servant. Of course, I'm talking about Snow. Spoiler alert for chapters, just a lot. Like anytime the berserkers are around, I literally can't fit all of the title cards on screen. Be sure to like and subscribe, and comment whichever Housamo hero you want next, and of course, donate to my Ko-fi and Patreon. Snow is a feline transient affiliated with Bukuro Academy. I say affiliated because I don't think he's a student, and it's never been confirmed if he's a teacher. I could certainly see him being a teacher, but it's never said. Regardless, the school he goes to is not nearly as important as his guild, because Snow is the second in command of the Ikebukuro Berserkers. He answers only to Claude, and from what we see in Chapter 7, the other berserkers listen to him in times of crisis. Outside of that, he acts as Claude's butler. He does whatever a butler does, which is, I don't know, buttle? He's kept outside of the berserkers' ranking system, but everyone agrees that Snow is pretty strong. I'd probably put him between Makin and Cthulhu because it is shown that Snow can withstand Cthulhu's explosions. He's also quite the chocolatier, working with Housamo to make their very own chocolate-making product thing. We do know Snow's rule and roll, making for what, the 5th time in this entire series that we did? You'd think they would include rules and rolls in the Sumopedias, but I guess not. Anyway, Snow's role is the vassal and his rule is the Trinity. And his sacred artifact are 3 chakra arms, a kind of circular bladed weapon. They have the ability to... hang on, I have to go check something. It looks like the chakra arms combine the physical, spiritual, and astral bodies to, like, destroy things? It's not really explained past like a single line from Snow himself. The way Snow's artifact acts upon 3 layers of existence has to do with his home world of Shangri-La. You should notice that Snow's power is kind of similar to Shiva's, and that's because their worlds of Shangri-La and Devaloka are pretty similar. And that's because both worlds are based on South Asian folklore, Devaloka being Indian and Shangri-La focusing on the Himalayan region. It's primarily Tibetan, but elements of Buddhism and other things practiced in the Nepal and Himalayan region do show up. That's where the things on Snow's uniform comes from. Those aren't swastikas, they're actually called manjis. They were symbols of good luck and well-being before the you-know-whos. He actually contains a number of other references to Buddhism in his design. His chakra arms have lotuses in the center, and his tie, while hard to see, appears to have an endless knot in the pattern. Both of these things are part of the Ashtamangala, or 8 auspicious signs. Followers of Buddhism use these signs as symbolic teaching tools. And damn it, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's begin this properly by getting into Snow's inspirations. We have a nice change of pace this time around. Unlike most other transients, Snow isn't based on a single creature, rather a kind of creature. That being the Tibetan snow lion, a very important animal in their culture. So important it's even on their national flag. Often depicted with white fur and a turquoise mane, these lions were said to be the lords of the mountain. Though their most notable role is actually in 2 major cultural stories. One being the epic of King Gesar and the other being the tale of Milarepa. They're not just major cultural milestones for the region, but humanity in general. The epic of King Gesar being a massive winding tale about a mythological folk hero and his many accomplishments. The story is super long, just the Tibetan version is around 120 volumes, so I can't get into it now. And then there's the tale of Milarepa, which is a rags to riches kind of story about a murderer correcting his path in life and becoming a Buddha. Notably, both of these folk heroes were raised by snow lionesses and weaned on their milk. Their milk was said to heal the body and restore it to harmony, and that is due to its connection with Dharma. Dharma, in Buddhism at least, refers to the teachings and methods of the Buddha which form the foundations of Buddhism. It's often depicted through this, the Dharma chakra, and specifically in Tibet, also known as the Wheel of Joy. The Wheel of Joy was often placed in the center of the Dharma chakra in 3 or 4 pieces depending on the artist. The pieces represent victory over the 3 poisons, the 3 jewels, and the 4 noble truths. Well, one of these things isn't like the others. The Wheel of Joy can also represent many other things and trinities, so many that I can't get into them here. Wheels of Joy were often given as hollow balls for snow lionesses to play with, since their milk actually comes from their paws. The same can be said for our lion butler, but I suppose now is as good of a time as any to get into Snow's interpretation. To begin, despite missing the turquoise flares, Snow is a Tibetan snow lion, or well, snow lioness. It's all but stated that Snow can in fact produce milk, although there's the implication that it doesn't come from his paws. Which is kind of weird because again, Snow is a dude, so let me explain my personal headcanon with a clip from one of my videos. Transmask Snow? Transmask Snow. I could have remade that clip, but honestly, I just didn't feel like it. And it makes sense that Snow was summoned to take care of Claude because Tibetan snow lions were known to raise great heroes. Snow's subdued attitude belying his rather rambunctious nature could be a reference to the fact that snow lions are naturally playful creatures. And remember the Ashtamangala I mentioned before? Well, his charge skill directly references them. His tie has the endless knot, which is symbolic of wisdom joining compassion. And his chakrams have lotuses, which represent the purity of mind, body, and spirit. I'm not 100% sure about this, but his alt art with the apron might also have lotus flowers on it, but I'm no flower doctor. His 3 chakrams are likely a reference to the Wheel of Joy and the Dharma chakra and the many trifecta they represent. Hell, Snow's rule is even the Trinity, for God's sake. That being said, I feel like it's about time we move on to Snow's backstory. Okay, I know I played the badass sound effect, but we really know nothing about this dude's past. We know he comes from Shangri-La, and yeah, that's about it. We don't even know what wish brought him to Tokyo, only that was Claude who summoned him as a child. So we know that Snow has been with Claude from the start, through thick and thin, watching his little Claude grow into a man. Or no, wait, not a man, because Claude is still a high schooler despite looking 30. So that means Snow has been with Claude for like, what, 10 to 15 years at most, assuming Claude is one of the older high schoolers at 19. From there, we know that Claude founded the Ikebukuro Berserkers and kept Snow as his right-hand man. I know this backstory is short and weird, but we genuinely don't know much about Snow's past. Which is weird because Snow shows up a lot. Like, every time the Berserkers are relevant, so is Snow, but he's never really the topic of conversation. Which makes the next part of this video kind of difficult because we have to do Snow's character analysis. The time when the writing behind Snow is at its strongest is in the Valentine's Time Slip event. Also known as the time Echo got 3 dads. Hang on, is that the event's theme? We've got Barghest, who is Kenta's dad, Yumao, who is a dad in the lore, and Snow, who has parental affection for Claude. As adorable as the trope of the servant falling in love with the master is, you're going to have to go to Melusine for that. Snow himself says that the love he has for Claude is different from the romantic love that Echo felt for Narcissus. The love Snow has for Claude is more fatherly in nature. Snow's parental instincts are one of the main focuses of the time slip event. I really like how you can see them spilling out onto Echo. It's honestly really cute and makes me wish we got to see more of Snow without Claude around sometimes. Snow also touches upon his dread for the day that Claude finally leaves the nest, so to speak. The relationship between Snow and Claude is definitely something I want to talk more about. Especially the contrast between the conditional love of Claude's mother to the unconditional love of Snow. Despite working for Conquerors, when Claude announces that he's stepping out of the running for the game, Snow chooses to stay by his side. But I'll save that for when we talk about Claude, which will be fucking, I don't know, some point. I know this hasn't really been much of a character analysis, but there's just not much for me to cover. His backstory is non-existent, and he exists relative to other characters. Due to that, we'll promptly be moving on to Snow's units. Our dear lion has 3 units, a normal 3 and 5 star and a limited 5 star from the time slip event. Beginning with his 3 star, it's a water attribute and blow type unit. Its skills are as follows. His first skill is Blood of the Beast, which gives him tenacity at 100% after moving. It's a generic throwaway skill that's not even good. Herbalist, his second skill, gives up to 480 HP to himself and adjacent allies at 100% at phase start. It doesn't heal enough HP, and it happens too infrequently. Third up is Mountain Dweller, which gives him a 100% chance for guts at phase start. Not gonna complain about guts, it's always good to have. Finally, Defender of Thrones gives protection and up to 10 CP to himself and adjacent allies after moving. Wait, why does he have this in Blood of the Beast? They're both after moving defense buffs. Putting that aside for later, next up is his Sword type and Water attribute 5-star. He only has 2 unique skills and one of them is a skill evo. Herbalist gets replaced by the skill evo, turning into White Maned Herbalist. At phase start, it gives up to 1000 HP to himself and allies 1 square around him at 100%, alongside nourishment in 1 square at 90%. And when appearing, he gets Berserk plus Strengthening despite having no way to get Berserk and deals nearly triple damage to Ardor affected enemies. This is a healing skill done right, 1000 HP and nourishment? Good lord. The only other change comes by way of his final skill being upgraded to Unified Trinity. It keeps the protection and CP bonus but now heals up to 500 HP after moving. Never expected Snow of all characters to be a healer, but it works surprisingly well. And finally is his limited 5-star from the Valentine's Time Slip event. Oh god, say Valentine's Time Slip 3 times fast. The event's about Echo, who accidentally sends Snow, Barghest, and Housamo into the past of Olympus to deal with her feelings for Narcissus. Also, Heracles is there. It's not a bad event, in fact, it's really cute and funny, one of the more carefree and casual events. And Snow's new unit isn't bad either. I like how the art is just Snow's regular look, but with a brown coat. It's an Aether attribute spear type unit, and its skills are as follows. Royal Servant gives him Vigor at 100% at phase start and heals up to 1300 HP to allies behind him at 90%. The nice healing and attack buff make it a pretty good support skill. Next is the Selector, which comes in 3 parts. Part 1, at phase start, he applies Remove Debuff to himself at 80%. Part 2, on turns by 2, he applies Crit to himself when attacking at 80%. Part 3, on phase turn 3, he removes all buffs from hit units. A weird set of skills that don't really correlate, but they're all good, so whatever. Thirdly is Beautifier, which gives up to 400 HP and up to 12 CP when attacking at 90%. And after moving, he nullifies a debuff to himself 90% of the time. I do like that he has a nice and consistent way to remove a debuff to himself as long as it's not Fear. And finally, the Ultimate Butler gives him up to 100 CP when appearing and up to 12 CP at turn start. All of Snow's units have something going for them, some more so than others. His 3-star is negligible. It's not that good of a healer compared to most other units, some of which aren't even dedicated healers. His 5-star definitely is the better healer by having the range of 1 square, but he lacks damage. You'll need to pair him with Claude, Fitting, Tezcatlipoca, Ironic, or Tendalos, to get his Berserk plus Strengthening. And his limited 5-star is weird. Unlike other units, he doesn't apply any status effects. Almost all of his buffs only apply to himself, making him incredibly isolated. The upside is that he doesn't need a team to do what he does, but the downside is that he has like no synergy. I guess you could put him with other good generic units like Summer Oz or Kresnik, but you could do that with everyone. Rounding out this video, let's move on from Snow's units to talk about his relationship chart. Snow has one of the fuller charts that we've seen. Horkyu Kamui likes Snow because he respects his fighting prowess and male wife abilities. And Snow himself likes Claude because, well, that's his boy. And on the flip side, Melusine and Mephistopheles dislike Snow because I guess the 3 of them have this servant rivalry or something. Not that we've ever seen Mephistopheles interact with Snow, let alone Melusine, but whatever. And Snow, of course, dislikes Melusine, but he also dislikes Heracles. That's due to Snow's dislike for the weak-willed. He loves to see people struggle and strive. Not someone like Heracles who has a habit of rolling over and doing what others tell him. Snow is a pretty cool character, I just wish we got to know more about him. I know this is like the third or fourth time I've said this, but despite being everywhere, Snow doesn't have much presence. We don't know much about his past or what he thinks, which I suppose makes sense because his research file does state that only those who know him very well could ever hope to comprehend the inner workings of his mind. Before we go, Snow does have 2 loading screens. The first shows Claude giving a thumbs up over what looks like a meatloaf version of his face, saying approve. And his other loading screen is shared with Horkyu Kamui. It shows the 2 of them hovering over a female male wife, whatever those are called, and it says, I choose them by their stems, referring to the apples. In conclusion, Snow's cool, we like him, and I want to see more of him. He gets Fuuri's official seal of approval. Let's begin our Patreon shoutouts. For Tier 1, we have special thanks to our 3-star supporters, Prismo144. For Tier 2, we have no one. And for Tier 3, we have special shoutouts to Mahagasaur, who once killed 3 stones with 0 birds. Then we have Vanilla Flower, who discovered the cure for cancer but decided they'd rather use it to turn people into dinosaurs. And finally, we have Unknown RC, who stopped the unstoppable Exodia. Be sure to tune in for the next Housamo hero, Babylon. I know I mentioned both Horkyu and Claude, but god damn it, I've been wanting to do her since we started this series. Be sure to like and subscribe, and of course, check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is your host Fuuri, signing out.